But the hot news is that the Patriots actually made a substantive offensive addition, signing Stefon Diggs to a 3-year deal. This was kind of a surprise given their lack of activity on the offensive market up until this point. Finally, they have a number one, ostensibly receiver for Drake May. Logan, Dakota, kind of what was your initial reaction? And now that you've kind of had the night to digest it, what are your thoughts?
Leaving it for me, Dakota.
Yep.
So it represents a few different things. For one, I guess there is the discussion about do free agents actually want to come to New England? Let's talk about the weather, the fact that the team has stunk over the last half decade, the taxes, things like that. So the fact that they did get someone who is one of the, at least in his generation, one of the better players at his position is not an insignificant development. Now, you are getting the back end of his career, and I am curious who they were bidding against because I feel like ordinarily, we didn't hear much about a bidding war for Stefon Diggs. So the fact that he's going to get what, 27 million guaranteed, 26 million guaranteed, something like that is a little surprising. So I would just be curious to know who they were bidding against. But as far as the on-field product, I think that if nothing else, it's good that there is a clearly delineated number one receiver. I feel like for the last 4 years, it's been like the who's the ace Red Sox. And basically, it's just like maybe it'll be Jalen Polk, maybe it'll be N'Keal Harry, maybe it'll be whoever, but you didn't actually have a clear cut number one go to guy. And they needed that. And so even if Stefon Diggs is taking a step back, I mean, he's coming off an ACL injury. He should at least be the security blanket that any young quarterback would benefit from. I mean, you look at before he left for the Bears, like Keenan Allen was a good one for Justin Herbert early on in his career. So I can see that type of situation a little bit. So overall, a net positive. But, I don't think that they're going to get the transformative receiver that he was with the Vikings or the early stage of his Bills run. But nevertheless, I mean, you can't sit here and say the Patriots don't get enough top end talent. They don't sign enough. They clearly can't draft receivers. So it's good that they're at least getting proven commodities in free agency. So overall, favorable, but I do think there's a chance that they kind of bid against themselves and overpaid, which is what you have to do when you're a bad team.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot to this, right? But I think as far as who they were bidding against, the reality is free agents can't take visits with other teams until the start of the new league year, which was what, like the 13th or the 14th. So no team was going to start bidding for him or trying to sign him until they got him in for visits to look at the medicals. So the Patriots were the first visit that he took. And, to me, I mean, they clearly wanted him. So I think they were just being aggressive to make sure he didn't go on other visits. He's Stefon Diggs. Like, I'm sure he would have had other visits, but no team was going to enter that bidding process until they got a chance to look at his knee. So I don't really like worry about that part of it too much. What I do wonder is, you know, I do think the storyline about him being like a bad presence for Drake May or a bad locker room presence, like I think that's overblown. If Drake May can't handle one guy who's like maybe a little annoying, then what are we talking about? But I think Stefan Diggs had a great relationship with Josh Allen for the most part up until the end, and then all indications are he was great in Houston last year. Everything you read is really positive, but to that end, I do wonder, why weren't the Texans in on this then? Because they're not getting Tank Dell back anytime soon. So they needed another, high ceiling wideout. They have championship aspirations right away. So, if they were comfortable with Diggs medicals and they liked how he was as a locker room fit last year and believe he still had something in the tank, why wouldn't they just make this deal? 26 million is not much. So I wonder about that. But as far as the money, like I have no issue with it because if you were going to do this, it was always going to be a 2-year deal because you just don't know what you're going to get in year one. Like if you want Stefan Diggs, you're hoping you can at some point get an approximation of prime Stefan Diggs. And it's just unlikely that we get that this year because he's not going to really be able to start practicing with Drake May until, I don't know, October. Like I don't believe Adam Schefter's report about him being ready for week one at all. So it's probably more like October. They have no chemistry, no history. So like, I think this is all about 2026, really, hoping you build some sort of foundation this season. So, I think 26 million is fine. Interestingly, the contract details for Cooper Cup just came out. That was 3 year, 45 million deal, but it was 17.5 million guaranteed, and it's really all in the first year. So for all intents and purposes, that's a 1 year, 17.5 million deal for Cooper Cup. So would you rather have Cooper Cup for 1 year at 17 and a half, or Stefon Diggs for 2 years at 13 for each? I think I don't know. I think it's an open. I think that's a you could debate either side of that. I'd probably go Stefon Diggs because he looked like he had more in the tank before he got hurt than Cooper Cup. And the other comp is DeAndre Hopkins, who his deal with the Titans was for 2 years, but it was effectively a 1 year, like 11 million deal. So this is kind of like right around, they did a second year of it, but this is kind of the going rate for, you know, receivers over 30 coming off injury, showing signs of decline. So yeah, I mean, I think they were a little aggressive, but I don't think it's egregious. They had the money, they spent it, and that's something they had to do. So I think overall, I think it's all positives. I'm just tempering expectations for this season because I think it's just optimistic to think they're going to get a lot out of them.
Quickly on your hypothetical, I think that's easily Diggs. Way more of a track record.
Over who?
Over Cup. If you're talking the same contracts, like way more of a track record. The injury history with Cup's way more documented at this point.
Yeah, and I just think Cup was slow, was losing a lot of speed last year,
Yeah.
and I forget who. I think it was ESPN's metrics, but they showed like, they have that advanced analytic that tracks, how open receivers get, and like in Cup's year when he won the receiving triple crown and set all those records, he was like third in the getting open, and then the next year he went down to like 103, and then last year it was like 145. So like there's a pretty clear track record there. Like for me, the Cup signing would have been more about like they need an adult in the room and someone who, I mean, he still has something in the tank, but they needed an adult to show Jalen Polk and Javon Baker and even Pop Douglas like how to be professional receivers. I do still think Stefon Diggs can be that. Like I think he can help inspire those guys. I don't think he's under any illusion or delusion that he's the receiver he was at 26, 27. So I buy into the fact that he can actually be a net positive for the locker room because I think that stuff about him being a diva receiver is a little overblown because all receivers are divas. So
Does this suggest any potential change to their draft strategy in your guys' eyes?
I don't think so because you're
No.
not drafting Stefon Diggs to be like I think this goes back to Logan. You made the point that he's the clear number one receiver. I mean, I would disagree. I think he's the two, or he should be the two. Like I think number one is open. Stefon Diggs is number two. Pop Douglas three. Mac Hollins four, and then number five is like it's Booty, it's Baker, it's Polk, it's Bourne. I think Bourne feels like prime trade bait, but Stefon Diggs, number one, obviously the injury, and number two, he's not a prototypical boundary receiver, which is what they need as the number one X receiver. So, I don't think it changes really anything they should do in the draft. If they want to go target someone like Ted McMillan, trade down for him, I think that could certainly be in play. And then, Travis Hunter is just, it's hard to speculate about that because we just don't know if they view him as a corner or a receiver. So
Yeah. I disagree on the number one receiver thing only because like all right, you want to have an open competition for that spot, like sure. What have you seen? Like if you're signing Stefon Diggs at this point to be your number two, you've got a lot more work to do, at least in the draft.
I think if you're signing a 31-year-old wideout, 32 in December, coming off a torn ACL to be your number one receiver, you have a lot of work to do in the draft.
I mean, the room was a disaster in the first place. I mean, Mac Hollins hardly solves anything. We've been trading Kendrick Bourne since he signed here. So, you know, I just I'm having a tough time following your logic that so should number one just be up for grabs? And it's like, all right, Jalen Polk's got to step up, or Javon Baker's got to step up, or Booty's got to be
No,
more
I'm just
consistent.
saying I think I don't think this signing precludes them from still exploring a trade
Sure.
for Brandon Ayuk or AJ Brown, or an aggressive play in the draft for a first round receiver, whether that's because they're not taking Ted McMillan at four, and I don't think Travis Hunter is like being drafted to be the number one receiver. That I don't think you can like bank on it like that. So I think it would be either trade back for someone like McMillan or trade back into the first round for some of these other guys. Um, I'm just saying like signing Diggs, I don't think at all prevents them from being aggressive to find a true future number one receiver. whoever that is. Like I think they could still absolutely be on Ayuk, Brown, or a top wideout.
I mean, AJ Brown's a different conversation because that's an obvious upgrade. But like, I don't know. And Brandon Ayuk, I'm not
Yeah, I
sure.
think yeah, I think Brandon Ayuk's number one receiver.
Okay.
I'm just saying before he got hurt, he was one of I mean,
Okay, but we're talking about injury concerns. So you're worried about
yeah,
signing
but he's
30-year-olds.
26. He's 26,
Yeah.
and ACLs don't really like they're not what they once were. I mean, the Patriots are telling you that by signing a 31-year-old receiver.
Yeah.
I think the concern with Brandon Ayuk is that a year ago or last August, he basically said he didn't want to be here. I mean, that probably was more about him trying to force his way to Pittsburgh, but the
Yeah.
Patriots were aggressive for that. And then the word is Gerard Mayo tried to call Brandon Ayuk and he just wouldn't pick up the phone. So do you turn around and make that guy the highest paid player on your team? Probably not, right? So I think that's the issue there. But as far as talent, I mean, we're talking about a guy. I mean, I think there was a year ago, ESPN came out with that poll where they polled executive scouts and coaches for all 32 teams and they ranked each position. I think that Brandon Ayuk was sixth on that. And so, like, I don't think he would be that on this year's list because of the injury, but I mean, he would still by far and away be their number one top franchise wideout if they got him.
Yeah.